Meanwhile, we are 4 days out from the start of Green Bay Packers training camp and still no word on whether quarterback Aaron Rodgers will be there when it opens. Rodgers, as you know, has stayed away from the team all offseason and has told people with the team that he no longer wants to play there. The Packers have refused to trade him. Starting Tuesday, each day Rodgers misses will cost him $50,000 in fines. So that's the update on Rodgers, such as it is, Jeff, but it's not the only thing the Packers are dealing with right now. What's going on with star wide receiver Davante Adams?
Well, nothing, precisely. Nothing at all. And that's the problem here because Davante Adams and the Packers still unlikely to reach a contract extension by the start of training camp. Now, look, I was under the impression to this point that Adams and the Packers were not going to make that type of progress, especially given the situation with Aaron Rodgers. Adams has made very clear publicly and privately how much Aaron Rodgers means to him, and quite honestly, I don't think he even needs to say it for us to understand that. So, barring a record-setting deal where he was going to be the highest-paid wide receiver in the NFL, which has not been among the offers that the Packers have made, I never expected this deal to get done in the first place. So certainly puts the dynamic of offense in Green Bay in peril, but no question about it. There are a lot of answers that the Packers need to address, and it starts with Aaron Rodgers, and after that, it moves directly to Davante Adams.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. It seems like it shouldn't be tricky because Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in the NFL. Or if you want to, pick Hopkins, you'd put him at top 3. So it makes sense, right, that he should have the biggest contract in the league. However, Hopkins kind of screwed up the market when he signed his extension in Arizona. He's now making $27 million a year, but I almost want to use quotations because that wasn't an entirely new contract. They were just tacking on some additional years. So when Adams comes in and says, well, I want to be the highest paid wide receiver, Green Bay probably went back to him and said, well, that Hopkins contract wasn't a real contract and $27 million a year is crazy for a wide receiver. And I imagine that's what's keeping the two sides apart. But this is a problem because Green Bay in 2022 has the least amount of cap space in the league. So it's going to be hard for them to just go ahead and even franchise tag him, which is why you want to get a long-term deal done, because then you can at least move the money around. And as a result, They're in a really difficult situation. And that's even before you get to the Aaron Rodgers component.
Yeah, that's the crazy part to me. Like, even if Aaron Rodgers was on the field, I mean, maybe we'd be more inclined to expect Adams to potentially take a lesser deal, but no chance if he doesn't know. I mean, if he's going to be catching passes from Jordan Love, all due respect, what does he know about Jordan Love, and how does that compare to Aaron Rodgers? There is no reason whatsoever for Adams to tie himself to Green Bay if in fact his value is not going to be at the height of the market. So otherwise, he should go to free agency if he can get there and allow a guy like Derek Carr, who's publicly said he's going to recruit him, to try to get his money up as high as possible in a place like Las Vegas.
Adams, 1 year left on his deal, so free agency right around the corner after this season. He finished last season with 18 touchdown catches, which tied for the third most in a season in NFL history behind a couple of guys named Randy Moss, who had 23 in 2007, and Jerry Rice, who had 22 in 1987. Coming up on NFL Live, the Buccaneers unveiled their championship rings last night, adding a 7th ring to Tom Brady's collection. He'll tell you which one is his favorite if you stick around. Plus, some breaking news today out of Minnesota involving the NFL's latest COVID-19 protocols. We'll have a live report on that when we come back.
Holy hell, I've been to a lot of parties, I promise you. Ain't nothing compared to this one.
The Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers report to training camp tomorrow. Last night, though, they had another party, and they got their Super Bowl rings. Welcome to NFL Live on this Friday. Our party includes Mina Kimes and Jeff Darlington, and we think Ryan Clark's coming later, but we'll let you know. We'll take a closer look at those rings later in the show, and we'll find out which one of Tom Brady's 7 is his favorite. But we're going to start in New Orleans, where Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas underwent ankle surgery last month and could miss the start of the season as a result, a source told ESPN. Thomas was troubled by the ankle injury throughout last season, and our Schefter had previously reported that he was expected to undergo surgery to repair the torn deltoid and other injured ligaments in his ankle. So, Jeff, he has the surgery in June. This puts the start of the season in jeopardy. What more can you tell us about the timing of all of this?
Well, Dan, the timing is the most peculiar aspect of all of this because, as you mentioned, our Adam Schefter reported months and months ago that this surgery was going to need to take place. Now, the question, of course, here is a matter of he's going to miss likely 4 weeks of the season. Why couldn't he have gotten the surgery done sooner? That'll be a question that Michael Thomas surely will be asked. At this point, we don't have the answer, but we know right now that Thomas did have the offseason. June is the time when he got the surgery, and now he's going to miss the start of the season. So one of the most important Saints players will certainly potentially impact that quarterback competition that we've been talking about. We'll see how that plays out once training camp begins.
And Jeff, that's going to be a quarterback competition that's going to be really hard to decide without Thomas because you're right, he is one of the most important Saints players. He's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL when he's healthy. He's also a volume monster. In fact, his last season when he was fully healthy, 2019, he commanded 33% of the Saints targets that led the NFL. Without him, suddenly everyone slides up. Traquan Smith becomes the number one wide receiver. I mean, I like Traquan. He's a solid, deep threat, stretch the field, number 3 kind of guy, but he is not a number 1 wide receiver. This was already a precariously thin position group that wasn't addressed in free agency. This was a cap-strapped team, and now I believe it's the thinnest group in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints look and see which free agents are available, maybe like a Kenny Stills, a Golden Tate, or even talk to other teams, because as constituted, this group without Michael Thomas is not an NFL caliber starting group of wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, and we do talk about that quarterback competition. I don't know where exactly this impacts it most, but I feel like it would be someone like Jameis. Like Jameis Winston is going to need to rely on a target like Michael Thomas, perhaps more than the unconventional Taysom Hill style. So, yeah, I don't think it's ultimately going to wind up dictating who is the starting quarterback for the Saints, but it does put, I feel like, Winston perhaps a little bit more in the handicap position than someone like Taysom Hill, who can use his legs to maybe get out of more than Winston.
Yeah, unless they need Taysom Hill to play wide receiver. I'm not even joking. Like, that is how thin this group is right now. Wow. Alvin Kamara immediately becomes the number 1 skill. I mean, he was already the number 1 skill player, but he is going to see his targets go through the roof. If you have Alvin Kamara in fantasy, congratulations. Jared Cook's gone. So they have a young tight end in Adam Troutman. Suddenly he becomes a key player. And Jeff, this is what happens when you're a team that spends a lot of money and pushes that money out and out and out, and suddenly you have cap issues, which is there are position groups across the roster that become thin, and you don't have reinforcements or depth waiting in the wings. And then suddenly, when you lose a key player to injury, like a Michael Thomas, you were out of options because you didn't have the resources to backfill that position, during the summer.
A lot of change, a lot of questions in New Orleans. They certainly did not want Michael Thomas to become one of those questions. He had that ankle injury all last season, and it limited him to 7 games, and he finished the year on injured reserve. After leading the NFL in receiving in 2019 and winning Offensive Player of the Year, Thomas had the largest drop-off in receiving yards of anyone from 2019 to 2020. When he's healthy, as Mina mentioned, he's a catch machine. His